That you missed. Who started? Mr. Molapisi, over to you.
Chair and members, thank you. I want to first start by really thanking the committee for a very sobering and I guess very robust engagement. Chair, I will theme the answers because there's some commonality in a number of questions that are being asked. But let me first start by saying that I'm a village boy of this country. I'm a son who was raised by Valet Molapisi, the domestic worker. I have a very clear conscience, committee members and the chair, and solid level of appreciation for the plight of our people. Whatever we're going to say here and that we're going to answer is going to come from a very sincere perspective. We have no interest and any benefit in misleading the committee and saying the things that we are not capable of doing or we have not done. But I want to say that we hear you. We hear you. Your voices are very strong and your concerns are very valid. And truly, some of the things that you are mentioning, you are not wrong. So we want to acknowledge you. We want to acknowledge you for being such a very engaging and provocative committee. It is the work of this committee that will serve the South Africans very well. So we don't take this engagement in a wrong, with a wrong spirit. We accept the fact that we must account and we have a responsibility to South Africa. So we are happy and excited about the manner in which you are going by your duties. So let's start there. There's a concern around a couple of things, maybe let's say price. I think there's a very strong concern from the committee members, Chair. There's a concern around the pricing construct of our business, around the expiry of bundles. So we need to all lean into that and maybe to explain. And of course, there's a very passionate plea around coverage. And there's also a very strong concern around the service obligations. Those are what I'm taking largely as a theme. There are individual questions that I'll attend to, but I want to answer them in themes because there are some that are common across different committee members. We received spectrum in this country in 2022. MTN spent 5.2 billion rands on the spectrum cost. And Chair, I will say that we are practically about 10 years late in the allocation of spectrum in our country. That 10-year late was punishing to us in terms of cost, but in essence was also punishing to South Africans in terms of the access to broadband infrastructure. We are now hard at work as MNOs. We're implementing the 5G spectrum, 3500, 2600, 800. It will take us a little bit of time to finalize the implementation, but we're making progress. We have reduced our prices. We mentioned earlier on about 46% price reduction of the 1 gig bundle. And Chair, you are quite rightly asking, if you're sitting on 149, how come you're able to accommodate 149 to 99? I will, however, Chair, in a way, request the committee to also, as we do the analysis and look at the study of global MNOs. And I think what you will find when you do a proper analysis of global MNOs, you will find that the return on invested capital across all MNOs in the world has declined. That the return on capital that we borrow has declined, and many of us are not able to meet the profitability to actually pay the loans that we get from the banks. So in science, in financial terms, we'll say our ROIC is close to WACC or below WACC. It is a global problem. That's why you see the markets in Europe are consolidating. India, which is the largest country, has got a huge number of people, can only take 2 or 3 MNOs. It simply cannot take any number with big numbers that they have. So the pricing construct, it is not, in our view, as exorbitant. If you check some of our bundles, I can check now, you get a bundle hourly bundle, 3-day bundle. You get what you call my town offers, which are bespoke propositions that we give to people in different towns. You go on our private pricing platform, you're able to get much cheaper propositions based on the level of usage. Our pricing takes into consideration the level of wallet spend. So if you are my sister Paulina in the village, we know how much you are capable of spending because we can see your spending patterns. And then we customize a proposition for you because we can't compare you with Charles Molapisi who lives in Johannesburg. And for that, we sort of like design the pricing principles around if you are spending 20 rand on a monthly basis, maybe if you can spend 21, we'll give you twice the volume of data. We call it more for more principle. That we do largely for the vulnerable, the people who are largely in trouble in terms of spend. So we are very sensitive to that. I want to be very clear on that. Can we do more? I'm sure we can. But is there a lot of effort that we are making ourselves as MTN and the MNOs? I will say definitely. And I will ask that we look at that private pricing that we do for the poor. We are very careful in terms of how we price to make sure that the vulnerable get favorable bundles and more for more principle. The data expiry one, it just makes me think on, just to maybe highlight to the committee that the network is a finite resource. So the network does not exist in infinity, it's finite. So when you price for the network as a matter of principle, you need to price with the resource allocation in mind. So when I price and I create demand on my network, how much of the demand can I be able to sustain and can I be able to support? So for instance, if you were to say, I come to Parliament, there's a parking lot, there's a bay there, I pay for it, and then you say to Parliament, I'm going to be back here next year in March, and my parking bay must always be open for me, because when I decide to use it one day at night, during the day, in the morning, on a Sunday, next week, next month, I must find my bay available. Here's what will happen to Parliament. To allocate that, they're going to have to create and build more parking bays. Because everybody who decides to come back later to access what they paid for will have to find that facility available. So when we do this, it is never to mislead. It is only because we say 7-day bundle, 3-day bundle, 1-hour bundle, we're giving it to you because we look at the resource on our network to say, for this volume of usage, we can afford to allocate the following resources because we don't have an overextended envelope in terms of capital expenditure. So it's really a construct that was never really meant to mislead. It is confusing? Yes. Can the consumer sometimes find annoying? Correct. But when you apply the principle of resource allocation and you understand that Parliament cannot leave the parking base to one individual who will come back in the next 12 months and they must find available. If you buy a ticket to Mthatha, you can't say I'm going to use it again in December next year. And every time I want to get into a bus, I must find my ticket available. You can't, because what will happen is that the provider of this service must create as many buses as possible for that sporadic level of demand that has been created. So maybe to answer that question, sounds a little bit heavy maybe in terms of how we're explaining it, but in essence what you're trying to say is that it was never meant to mislead, but we can understand why customers might wrestle with the acceptance and understanding. But if the committee can also maybe, we can take you into our confidence and explain to you in level of detail, so it can help us to propagate this message that this was never intended to be a misleading proposition. But I will tell you that we do many propositions that our people should find affordable that are one-to-one pricing. That one-to-one pricing, we call it private pricing, bespoke private pricing, or CVM, customer value management propositions, which allows that we actually monitor your spend and give you according to the size of your wallet so that you don't penalize the poor. On coverage, let me deal with the 99% confusion. And Chair, I want to touch on the issue of sharing. Maybe let me start with that. I think you are absolutely correct. I think between MTN and Vodacom, and I stand to be corrected here, Mr. Mdlalosi, I stand to be corrected, but I think there's about 2,000 sites where we co-locate, where you find MTN network on their side and you find Vodacom network on our side. There is that. And that's why today we're even exploring even further to try and lower the cost. We're exploring what you call security sharing. Because if we are sitting on the same site, It makes no sense that a security agent must go and run to the site to go and check if the MTN equipment has been vandalized, and 7 minutes later, rush back with a different car, a different personnel, to go and check if the Vodacom equipment has been vandalized. We've engaged a Comcom on that, and I think we'll be closing that. We've given ourselves as the two CEOs the next 2-3 months to try and bring that consolidation of sharing. What that will do for us is that a site is sitting in the remote villages, the provider of security can go in once. That will help us to bring the cost down. I want to assure you that we are completely hard at work to try and find the ways to bring the service in a cheaper way to service the rural areas. Security sharing, that's one of them. So where we can, we're going to be able to do that. So any possible sharing under the current construct of the rules, we're going to do. That will help us to be able to do that. So we're innovating around that particular area. And then also, what we'll call for is also where we can co-build and figure out how ICASA can support us in terms of, the rules can support us in terms of co-build. But the point you are raising is absolutely correct. In the past, it used to be about who's got the number of sites. The network advantage used to be a key differentiator in the past. So if I say I've got 25,000 sites, someone's got 12,000 sites, it's about who's big and who's got a better presence. But that has changed because many of us share the network, we roam on each other's network. So the network advantage, in essence, I think parity has come through. And therefore, the issue of network differentiation in terms of footprint is no longer the primary matter. We have to consolidate our resources and share so that we can create universal coverage to address that point. So I've dealt with price, expiry, coverage. And there's a critical point here that you made, and which I found very compelling. I think you asked the question of coverage versus access. I thought it was very smart question, because I think it is very easy to come and say, look, we are 99% covered or 98%, 96% covered on LTE. But of course, if in that village there's only one person with a smartphone, that coverage in essence is actually meaningless. And there are a number of interventions we have to do to address that. So first of all, we have to look at the device access. The device access and also goes to the point about device manufacturing. The device access is a collective effort. It's not just the MNOs. There are many other retailers who distribute devices in this market who also need to create affordable means to be able to bring the devices. I mentioned earlier on about MTN, what MTN is doing around devices, the 99 Rand smartphone. And Honorable Glisha, if I'm correct, I want to honestly correct you that the 99 Rand device for smartphone, I think you're confusing me with someone else. The 99 Rand smartphone for MTN, does not mean anything. Once you pay me 99 Rand, we take that 99 Rand, we put it aside for insurance. There's no obligation. There's no obligation for you to recharge, and if you don't recharge, we block. There is nothing like that, not on the MTN device. And I'm very happy to put that forward. It is the innovation of its own kind in this country and in the continent as we speak today, that we're the only MNO who's doing this at scale. And we're very proud about that because we understand what we need to do. So, Chair, I'm going to go back and maybe look at the individual questions just to make sure that I've dealt with all the questions one by one. Chair, you'll have to tell me how much time I have.
Yeah, I'm having to impose time on you as well, the CEO.
Okay. I'm going to try and answer if you've got, there were quite a number of questions which were asked. And I think there was a question around our role within the Stage Digital Company. I think the question was asked by Honorable Vilakazi. And there's also a question about how do we see ourselves as MNOs and our role with government. Let me be very quick and clear to explain that we are definitely a partner of government. There was also a question around our role in terms of creating new industries. I will say this, Chair, you know how passionate I am in terms of software development in this country. I will say that the industries that you see today, the internet-based companies or software-based companies, are built on the backbone of mobile operators, globally and here. Every software company that you see that's got access to the internet and data and on devices, it is enabled through the creation of platforms and data access and APIs, is built on the backbone of MNOs. We are a critical enabler in this market in terms of the creation of new businesses and new industries. There was a question around 2G and 3G sunset. We have taken as MTN a target of saying we need to decommission the 3G layer 2026, 2027. That is dependent on a number of variables. If our people can get to the MTN stores as quick enough and leave the old devices and take the new ones with 99 rand, we'll be very happy to decommission this layer as soon as possible. In some markets, in some provinces, we've started to do that already. So I think we're making very good progress around the 2G layer. We said as an MTN that we'll leave a sliver of 2G layer because